General William Matthews walked briskly through Camp Liberty's armory, his eyes trained on the usual rows of soldiers, checking and cleaning their weapons. Nothing seemed unusual until he noticed her. A lone figure sat quietly in the corner, methodically disassembling a massive Barrett M82A1 50 caliber sniper rifle. At first glance, it looked like standard maintenance, but then Matthews caught sight of a small badge pinned to her uniform. He froze. The inscription read, 3,200-meter confirmed kill. The general's pulse quickened. That distance was more than double what most snipers even considered possible. "Soldier," he said sharply, "that's impossible. No one has ever made a shot at that range." The woman looked up calmly, her eyes steady. "Sir, the shot was confirmed by multiple observers in Mission Command. The documentation is classified, but it happened." For the first time in years, General Matthews felt the ground shift beneath his certainty. He had just stumbled upon something extraordinary, something he had to know more about. General Matthews could not simply walk away. The soldier in front of him carried an aura of quiet precision, and now the mysterious badge had turned routine inspection into something far more intriguing. He signaled to his aide, Lieutenant Colonel Harrison, to pull up her record. As Luna continued working on the Barrett with calm concentration, Harrison scrolled through the database, his expression tightening with each line he read. Sir Harrison began, Staff Sergeant Luna Valdez, graduated top of her class at Army Sniper School, setting the highest marksmanship scores ever recorded. She went on to advanced training in long-range ballistics, environmental analysis, and reconnaissance. Her assignments include deployments with the 75th Ranger Regiment support operations, with Delta Force, and multiple classified missions. Some of these don't even appear in the standard records. Matthews studied her, his curiosity sharpening into something closer to awe. The general had served for decades, worked with elite units, and read countless service files. Yet Luna's record looked less like a soldier's resume and more like a myth stitched together from the shadows of military history. He stepped closer. "Valdez," he asked, "explain to me how a human being makes a 3,200-meter shot. Most snipers consider half that distance to be nearly impossible." Luna set aside the rifle component she had been cleaning, then lifted her gaze with the calm certainty of someone who knew the science as well as the art. She spoke of bullet drop and spin drift of the Coriolis effect, caused by the Earth's rotation of air density, temperature gradients, and wind directions shifting across multiple altitudes. Each word was delivered with precision, as if she carried an entire textbook of ballistics in her memory. Matthews listened, realizing this was no ordinary sharpshooter. This was someone who had mastered the chaos of physics and turned it into control. And yet what unsettled him most was how matter-of-fact she sounded, as if describing an ordinary day at work. The general leaned in, voice low but urgent. "Tell me about that engagement. What were the circumstances? How did you achieve it?" For the first time, Luna's expression shifted. Her tone grew guarded. "Sir, the details of that operation are classified. I can describe the technical conditions, but not the mission itself." Harrison glanced up from his tablet. "She's right, sir. Her file is sealed beyond our clearance." Matthews clenched his jaw. He had been in the Army long enough to know when he'd touched the edge of something buried deep in the system. But he also knew he couldn't just let it go. He wanted answers, and he was determined to get them. General Matthews wasn't the kind of man who left questions unanswered. His career had been built on probing deeper, on refusing to accept the limits others believed were fixed. And now, standing before Luna Valdez, he felt that old hunger to break through the impossible. "Valdez," he said firmly, "I'm authorizing you to discuss the technical aspects of that shot. I need to understand how the United States military has reached a point where a 3,200-meter kill is even conceivable." Luna studied him in silence for a moment, weighing the request against the protocols drilled into her since her first day in uniform. At last she inclined her head. "Very well, sir. The engagement took place in mountainous terrain, which provided the elevation advantage necessary for extreme range. The target was stationary long enough for me to analyze conditions and run ballistic computations. Weather was ideal, clear visibility, minimal wind, and stable air pressure. Every factor aligned, and I had the time to prepare." Matthews narrowed his eyes. "But even so, how do you see that far 3,200 meters is over 2 miles? Her reply was calm. Advanced optics, sir. The Barrett can be fitted with high magnification scopes paired with laser rangefinders and ballistic computers. They extend the shooter's reach far beyond what the naked eye can perceive. The technology makes it possible. The skill makes it real. It wasn't just the technology that impressed Matthews, it was her composure. She spoke of impossible distances and superhuman patience, as if describing the weather. How long did it take you to prepare, he asked. 4 hours, she answered without hesitation. I maintained position the entire time, calculating variables, waiting for the moment when everything aligned. One mistake, one rushed decision, and the shot would have failed. Extreme range precision demands patience above all else. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison, still scribbling notes on his tablet, finally looked up. His voice was hushed, but the awe in it was unmistakable. General, what she's describing isn't in any of our training manuals. This is beyond anything I've ever seen or heard of in conventional doctrine. Matthews straightened the decision forming in his mind before the words even left his mouth. Valdez, I want to see it. A demonstration. Show me what's possible with your training and your rifle. For the first time, Luna hesitated. Sir, such a demonstration requires strict safety protocols, specialized facilities, and full authorization. The distances involved aren't typical training grounds. I'll handle the authorization, Matthews said, his tone leaving no room for debate. If we have to coordinate with other bases, we will. Harrison, arrange it. Whatever she needs, range targets, equipment, make it happen. Luna's expression remained carefully neutral, but behind her steady eyes lay a flicker of concern. She knew the risks, the weight of responsibility if something went wrong, yet she also knew the general's determination was immovable. After a pause, she offered a compromise. Sir, the longest range available here at Camp Liberty is 1,200 meters. It's not the full distance, but it will demonstrate the fundamentals clearly. If you still wish to see more after that, we can discuss extended facilities. Matthews gave a sharp nod. Then 1,200 it is. I want to see what you can do. 2 days later, the stage would be set for the kind of demonstration that could change the general's entire understanding of modern warfare. 2 days later, the extended range at Camp Liberty was alive with a quiet sense of anticipation. General Matthews arrived with several members of his staff, their curiosity sharpened by the whispers surrounding Staff Sergeant Luna Valdez. Soldiers who had heard fragments of her reputation lingered at the edge of the range, eager to witness something few ever got the chance to see. Luna, as always, was calm. She had spent the morning in deliberate preparation, treating each step with the same ritualistic precision that had stunned the general in the armory. The Barrett M82A1 lay before her, stripped and reassembled with perfect order. Alongside it were her tools, advanced optics tuned for clarity devices that monitored wind temperature and air pressure, and a compact ballistic computer, humming quietly with the mathematics of war. When everything was finally in place, she turned to Matthews. General, the target has been positioned at exactly 1,200 meters. Conditions are optimal, minimal wind-steady air density, and full visibility. I am ready. Matthews lifted a pair of binoculars, his eyes narrowing on the distant target barely visible against the horizon. Even at this distance, it felt impossibly far. Proceed, he said. Luna settled into her position. She moved with the kind of patience that suggested time itself bent to her will. First came the measurements, wind direction at multiple points, subtle changes in air density, the almost imperceptible sway of grass far downrange. She logged each variable into her device, letting the ballistic computer translate the environment into numbers. Valdez, Matthews called out, his voice softer. Now tell me what you're doing. She didn't lift her eyes from the scope. Sir, I'm measuring crosswinds across the flight path. Even a 1 mile per hour difference can shift impact by several feet at this distance. I'm also calculating spin drift from the bullet's rotation and adjusting for temperature gradients. Every factor matters. Minutes passed in silence as Luna finalized her calculations. Finally, she exhaled slowly, her body stilling, as if every muscle had entered a pact with gravity. The massive Barrett thundered its recoil, sending a tremor through the ground. The range safety officer, watching through a spotting scope, called out immediately, "Target hit. Center mass." Matthews jerked his binoculars into focus, his breath catching as he confirmed it himself. A clean, precise hit dead center at 1,200 meters. He lowered the binoculars, slowly struggling to reconcile what he had just witnessed. He paused, the weight of the word hanging heavy. Impressive doesn't begin to cover it. And you're telling me you can do the same at nearly 3 times this distance? Luna remained composed. The principles are identical, sir. The difference lies in time, patience, and the precision of the calculations. Longer distances amplify every variable, but the process remains the same. Matthews knew then that he wasn't simply observing a talented soldier. He was witnessing the fusion of technology, discipline, and human skill at its very peak. For all his years in command, he had never felt so aware of how much he didn't know about the hidden capabilities of the people under his command. And yet he wanted more. A single shot had shown him what was possible. But Luna's badge promised something that bordered on the impossible. The demonstration at 200 meters had left General Matthews impressed but not satisfied. He knew he had only seen a glimpse of what Luna Valdez was capable of. The clean, precise shot had proven her skill, but the badge on her uniform still haunted him. 3,200 meters. That wasn't just skill, it was legend, the kind of story soldiers whispered in barracks but never believed. Determined to uncover the truth, Matthews began working through the channels that kept her record sealed. It took a week of relentless calls, urgent requests, and invoking every ounce of authority he had earned across decades of service. At last, clearance was granted. A thick, encrypted file appeared on his desk, carrying the weight of a career unlike anything he had ever read. The file told the story of a soldier identified early as extraordinary. During basic training, Luna's marksmanship scores shattered records so completely that her instructors thought the system was malfunctioning. Within months, she was quietly recruited into specialized programs most soldiers never even heard existed. These weren't just advanced sniper courses, they were programs designed to push the boundaries of what human beings could do, with precision weapons integrating science, technology, and psychology into a single discipline. Her deployments read like a map of the world's most dangerous conflicts. Iraq, Afghanistan, undisclosed locations across Africa and Eastern Europe. Each mission was high stakes, often involving targets too dangerous for conventional forces to engage directly. And woven throughout those reports were entries that blurred the line between human skill and impossibility. Hostage rescues that hinged on a single bullet. Enemy commanders eliminated at distances where no one else would even attempt the shot. Then came the entry Matthews had been waiting for, the 200-meter engagement. It had taken place during a hostage crisis in mountainous terrain. Conventional forces couldn't breach without risking the lives of every hostage. Luna had positioned herself high above the valley, spending hours calculating, waiting, watching. When the moment finally came, her bullet traveled over 2 miles, striking the target with surgical precision. The hostages were freed. The mission had succeeded only because of her. Matthews leaned back in his chair, staring at the closed file. This was no ordinary soldier tucked into the corner of his armory. This was a weapon of unmatched value, a quiet force shaping outcomes that could shift entire conflicts. She wasn't just another staff sergeant, she was a strategic asset. The thought unsettled him. Why was someone like Luna here performing daily rifle maintenance in a corner of Camp Liberty? Why wasn't she operating at higher levels, her skills shaping major strategies instead of waiting in silence for the next classified call? The answer came during a briefing with General Patricia Stone, a name synonymous with the most closely guarded operations in the military. She listened patiently as Matthews laid out his discovery, his amazement, and his questions. Then she explained, her voice steady, her tone absolute. Matthews Valdez is being utilized exactly as she should be. Her assignments are coordinated at levels you don't have access to because her missions serve strategic purposes, not tactical ones. She operates where failure is not an option, where conventional solutions simply do not exist. It was then that Matthews understood. The quiet soldier in the corner wasn't overlooked. She wasn't misplaced. She was exactly where she needed to be, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the moment when the impossible became necessary. From that day forward, General Matthews saw Luna Valdez differently. Every time he passed her in the armory, quietly tending to her Barrett, Matey 2A1, he no longer saw just another soldier maintaining discipline. He saw a professional who carried the weight of operations no one else even knew existed. Someone whose calm silence hid the kind of stories that could fill entire books of military history. Her service record became a study in extraordinary moments. Each mission carried a pattern assignments where traditional strategies would have led to disaster, where hundreds of soldiers might have been lost, or where hostages would never have survived. Luna was sent in not as part of the crowd, but as the solitary edge of the spear, the one element capable of bending the impossible into reality. One entry described her neutralizing an insurgent commander inside a fortified compound. The target had surrounded himself with shields of human life, betting that American forces would never risk a direct strike. Luna spent nearly 6 hours on the ridge fighting fatigue and the ache of muscles locked in position. When the target finally stepped into a line of sight, her single shot ended the standoff without harm to the civilians trapped inside. Another account revealed her role in dismantling an arms smuggling network operating deep in hostile territory. Instead of full-scale raids which would have triggered bloodshed across the region, Luna eliminated key figures silently one after another from distances that turned her presence into a ghost story among the enemy. They never saw her, never heard her, only felt the sudden collapse of their leadership until the network crumbled. And yet, despite these missions, Luna never carried herself with arrogance or sought recognition. In the barracks, she was quiet, blending easily into the background. Other soldiers barely noticed her, perhaps thinking of her as a solitary figure who kept to herself. Few realized they were sharing space with someone who had shaped the outcome of battles far beyond their knowledge. General Matthews found himself respecting her in ways he hadn't expected. In the military, he had seen men boast loudly of half the achievements she had quietly recorded. But Luna seemed untouched by ego. Her focus was always forward on the weapon, on the preparation, on the responsibility that came with her skill. One evening, while walking through Camp Liberty after a long day of reports, Matthews caught sight of Luna again, seated alone under the fading light, methodically cleaning her rifle. For a moment, he simply watched her, understanding in that silence why legends were rarely loud. They didn't need to be. They carried proof in the lives they saved, in the missions that succeeded only because of their hands. For Matthews, the discovery of Luna Valdez was more than the uncovering of a soldier's record. It was a lesson that sometimes the greatest power within the military wasn't in the tanks, the planes, or the ranks of marching troops. Sometimes it was a single soldier, quiet and relentless, who carried within them the capacity to change the course of events with one bullet, one decision, one impossible shot. 6 months after the demonstration, the call came. Camp Liberty received orders for a mission so sensitive that only a handful of people were even briefed. A high-value target had taken hostages deep in mountainous terrain in a location so fortified that no ground assault could succeed without catastrophic loss of life. Time was running out, and every traditional strategy had failed. That was when Luna Valdez's name rose to the top of the list. General Matthews stood in the operations room when her orders were confirmed. Even after reading her record, even after watching her precision at 1,200 meters, he found himself uneasy. Not because he doubted her ability, but because he now understood just how much was being placed on her shoulders. The success of the mission and the survival of innocent lives depended on a single shot from a soldier sitting miles away. The details of the operation remained locked in classified files, but what filtered back to Matthews was enough. Luna hiked into the mountains under cover of darkness, carrying her Barrett across jagged cliffs where every step threatened disaster. She set her position on a ridge overlooking the valley elevation, giving her the vantage point she needed. Then the long wait began. Hours passed. The wind shifted, settled, shifted again. Clouds drifted across the moon-breaking visibility. At one point, a sudden gust forced her to recalculate everything she had logged before. Patience was her only weapon now. Muscles stiffened, her body ached, but her focus never wavered. She watched, listened, measured the earth itself breathing around her. When the moment came, it was almost quiet. The target appeared stepping into the narrow line of sight, believing he was untouchable. Luna steadied her breathing, let her body become stone, and touched the trigger. The Barrett roared across the mountains. 2 miles away, the target dropped instantly. The hostages lived. The crisis ended not with an assault, but with a single bullet launched across a distance most considered unimaginable. When the report reached Matthews, he sat in silence for a long time. The official debrief labeled the mission a success, another classified engagement closed neatly in the records. But Matthews knew what it truly was: proof. Proof that the badge he had once questioned was no myth. Proof that Luna Valdez wasn't just skilled, she was the embodiment of discipline, science, and willpower forged into something extraordinary. From that day, whenever he looked at her, he no longer saw a soldier cleaning her rifle in the corner. He saw a reminder that sometimes the future of an operation of countless lives could rest in the hands of one quiet figure who never sought recognition. Luna's story was no longer just a line in a file. It was a truth Matthews carried with him, a truth that whispered of what the human spirit could achieve when pushed beyond its limits. In the months that followed, General Matthews saw Luna only in passing. She remained at Camp Liberty, continuing her ritual of meticulous maintenance, the Barrett always resting across her lap like a silent companion. To the casual eye, nothing had changed. She was still the quiet soldier in the corner. But to Matthews, every glance reminded him of the shot that had rewritten the limits of possibility. The more he learned, the clearer the picture became. Luna's role was not to bask in recognition or climb the ladder of visible command. Her purpose lay in remaining unseen, a living safeguard, deployed only when conventional means had no chance of success. The Army did not advertise her existence. The world was not meant to know. She was a weapon reserved for moments where failure was unthinkable. One evening during a private briefing with General Patricia Stone Matthews, asked the question that had been circling in his mind since that day in the armory. Why keep someone like Valdez in the shadows? Why not let the world know we have this capability? Stone's response was measured steady. Because Matthews, the value of people like her isn't in public recognition. It's in quiet success. Strategic advantage comes from silence. The enemy never prepares for what they don't know exists. He understood then that Luna's anonymity was her shield and the military's edge. The world would never know her name yet. Her actions would ripple across maps and headlines, shaping outcomes without ever being credited. For Matthews, that realization carried weight. In his decades of service, he had seen generals rise and fall, wars start and end, and countless soldiers remembered in ceremony or forgotten in time. But Luna Valdez taught him something different, that true greatness often works in silence, that the most extraordinary soldiers do not march at the front or shout their victories, but sit quietly in the corner, preparing, waiting, carrying the impossible inside them until the day it is needed. Her story became a quiet lesson he carried into every inspection, every decision, every moment when he glanced at the ranks under his command. He began to look closer, to wonder which quiet figure in the background might carry untold abilities hidden beneath a calm exterior. Because if Luna Valdez had taught him anything, it was this: sometimes the person you barely notice is the one who will change everything when it matters most. She didn't just make an impossible shot. She embodied the edge of human achievement, discipline, patience, and skill honed so sharply it became a weapon of its own. And though her service record would remain classified, her legacy lived in every soldier who understood that preparation in silence can one day echo louder than the roar of war.